waste storage space. I used to think that they didn't hurt anything because they were empty. It didn't have to contain any picture information. Once I read through all the in-player manuals, I found out how wrong I was. You have to crop out black borders. Now, when you see something like that, go ahead and open your video filter, pull up, and then soft skip, and then crop equals all movies are 720 pixels wide. I didn't see any borders to the left and right, so we're going to leave 720 where it is. Now all movies are 480 tall, but movies that are very widescreen like that are 2.35 to 1, even though they've got a black border on the top and bottom that make them 1.78 to 1. In other words, they're 2.35 to 1, even though they're contained within a 16:9 picture frame. So that brings them down to 368 pixels tall and not 480. So we're going to crop it at 720 by 368. 368 is an even increment of 16. Remember, it has to be even numbers of 16 because of the way the codecs transcode it. Now, our horizontal offset is going to be 0 because we're not going to offset the rectangle we're cropping out of from left to right. And then colon to separate the vertical one. And I always start off with 54 because that usually gives you a good start. And then I hit enter, up, 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 up 4 times, and it usually gets you far enough into the movie where you can see what needs to be cropped. And as you can see, there's 4 pixels on the top of black border that needs to be cropped. So we're not going to change our vertical crop yet. We're just going to bring the offset down another 2 pixels to make it 56. They have to be even increments of 2 pixels. That's because of the way codecs work. And again, hopefully I will explain that in a previous video unless I forget. I still see 2 pixels of border on the top. Even if it's only 1 pixel, you have to crop 2 pixels at a time. So we're going to bring this offset down up to 58 pixels. And we're perfect. No black borders anywhere. And that is your 2.35 to 1 ratio. Alright, so now that we've got that, we've got to put a comma in there because we're going to add another filter to scale it back to 720 and not 480 this time, but 368. Now, a lot of movies, or a lot of DVD players, if you've got something in there that isn't quite 480 tall, it letterboxes it, which means it centers it on the screen and just adds a black border to it as it plays on the top and bottom of the movie. So we're going to go ahead and scale it back up. Even though it's already cropped to 720 by 368, we're going to go ahead and use scale anyway. And if InPlayer decides it doesn't need it, it'll ignore it. It'll optimize it out. So scale equals 720 colon 368. Comma, now we're going to do the D size. D size equals 2.35 because that's a 2.35 to 1 ratio. Now, while I'm thinking of it, let me show you an example of what happens when you get the wrong D size. You will know it. Now watch, we'll use a 16:9 D size, which is 1.78. Well, as you can see, it's more rectangular, and the movie is obviously screwed up. Everybody's head looks like they're related to the Conehead family. And if you use a 1.33 ratio, which is a 4:3, the decimal representation of the 4:3 ratio, which is full screen, you get your square box. Alright, so you know that is definitely 2.35 to 1. Space and then -AF, we're going to do our audio filters. And volume, I believe on this one was 8, and then comma, vol norm equals 1 to go ahead and normalize it using the first method. Okay, now I can hear what they're saying. It's a little quiet, but they're not talking very loud in the movie, so you got to account for that too. If they're whispering in the movie, then you may not have to turn it up anymore. It may already be good. Go ahead and turn it all the way up and find a loud spot. Alright, it's loud, but it didn't blow out my speakers, so we're good to go. Let's turn this back down. Alright, now that covers how to get the filters for your videos right. Because, like I said, I give you the InPlayer profiles, the mencoder profiles, and I give you this template shell script to put in each directory. Now here's what you do with it. You go through and you get all this set up. And after you get it all set up, you open another file. I have another file already, but you can create. That's the wrong hard drive. There it is. Create another file. Call it whatever you want. Where the hell am I? I call mine TC because I don't like typing long names, but TC is short to me, short for transcode. All right, this is my transcode list. Now, what you do is, okay, we've got 15 files that we're about to transcode. You need to have, so you can put your computer down and set it to work and then walk away from your computer without it running out of disk space. You need to make sure you've got some empty space on that hard drive first. I've only got 6.5 gigabytes of free space right now, which means by the time 2 movies are done transcoding, I better hurry up and delete the VOBs off the hard drive to make room for more. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of room and all the movies will be corrupt and they'll exit. And I left one movie that I didn't delete yet. On purpose, so that I just got done transcoding, so I could show you what to do when they're done transcoding. Alright, so copy this line. Hell, I'll even put this up on my website. Copy this line and paste it a few times. 15, we're going to create. Now, if you have, I want to point out, if you have a dual core processor, which you'll see if you use Linux, you'll see it like this: processor 0, processor 1, dual core, or X2, whatever. If you have a dual core processor, you will see this right here: CPU 1, CPU 2. You will see 2 processes. Now, this is very careful you listen to this. This means you can transcode 2 movies at the same time. Now, putting a bunch of movies in a list does not mean you're transcoding all those movies at the same time. They are going to sequentially transcode. Transcoding 2 movies at the same time means creating 2 shell scripts that you will be Control Shift T opens a separate tab in terminal. Now you're going to run 2 shell scripts, 1 in each terminal, and they are each going to set their affinity to each of these CPUs. This means that you can max out both of your processors, and because that you're only running 2 scripts at the same time, you can still use the rest of your computer without it really being very slow, because when it needs to cut into CPU time, it can alternate which CPU it's cutting into. If you transcode any more than 2 movies at the same time, you are asking the processor to max it out for each movie when there's only 2 processors. So it's going to be swapping back and forth between movies which use 100% of its utilization anyway. So you're going to be slowing your process down. In other words, setting up 4 transcoding scripts will be 1.5 times slower than only using 2 long ones at the same time. Alright, so pay attention to that. The number of, if you've got a quad core processor, well, you're very blessed. You can run 4 scripts at the same time, and you won't even notice it when you're doing stuff on your computer and opening stuff and doing this and doing that. You won't even notice it because your computer's only cutting into, it'll switch between which processor's cutting into to do which functions. It alternates, and the computer's workload just to do its basic functions are very limited. They're not CPU intensive, but transcoding movies is very CPU intensive. So again, only run the same amount of scripts simultaneously as you have processors. Alright, now we've got 15 files, which means we can run 7, and then in each script, and one of them's going to have 8. So we'll just copy, and you'll see right here it says CD, which means change directory. And then for me on my computer, I've got a hard drive called Multimedia 1. I've actually got 4 hard drives: Multimedia 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then /video, and then /, and then that'll be the name of the directory you're changing directory into. Like, for example, the video Silent Hill directory. Multimedia 1, video, Silent Hill would bring us into this directory, and then right here underneath that it says bash, which is the bash shell, then 264.sh, which means run a file in this directory called 264.sh. This is your encoder file that you set up all your video filters in, the one that I let you download from the website. So you're going to copy this line, these 2 lines, and then paste them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then do it again in the next one, except only 7 times. Alright, so these two different scripts are going to run in two different processors at the same time, and they're going to change into each directory. When they get done with one directory, when they get completely done, they'll change to the next directory and execute that script and transcode that movie. When it's done, so on and so forth. So, by doing this, you can fill your hard drive up with movies, drop them from your DVD, fill them up with movies, go through this whole process of going down this list,